Hi everyone, good Tuesday afternoon and welcome to Go Local Live. I'm Go Local News editor Kate Nagel. Thanks for tuning in as we check in with Jennifer Lawless down at the University of Virginia, professor of political science, as all eyes are on inside the Beltway as the House of Representatives is expected to take up a vote for what they say are the racist comments by President Donald Trump pertaining to 4 progressive Democratic female representatives who he tweeted should go back and fix their totally crime-infested places from which they came. He says the comments are not racist. Jennifer Lawless.
He's wrong. They are, and he is. And there's really no other way to look at this. The question is now going to be whether Republicans in Congress have the backbone that's required to stand up to Donald Trump. And early signs indicate that there aren't that many of them who are willing to do it. We saw yesterday when various reporters cornered different Republicans in the House and in the Senate. Some of them were willing to say that these comments were inappropriate. Mitt Romney said some forceful things. But at the end of the day, the overwhelming majority of them have been silent, and some have even defended him.
Let's talk a little bit about the optics of this. We do know the president, from a business perspective and political, can be a master tactician. Is this a way of putting a line in the sand for 2020 in terms of lining up Republicans either for him or against him?
It's one way to do that, but it's a risky strategy, I think, because although this certainly plays to his base, it puts other Republicans in a pretty difficult position, because you can be a really conservative Republican on fiscal issues, on social policy issues, and still not be a racist or somebody that's willing to embrace racist rhetoric. And I don't know that Donald Trump actually has the supporters across the country that are necessary to continue this kind of narrative. He's going to try it, and we saw Kellyanne Conway today come out and say that these 4 women were actually just the tip of the iceberg. He thinks that the entire progressive Democratic caucus is guilty of what he's charged them with. And so the White House is certainly doubling down, which is Trump's tactic, and it's generally worked. But Charlottesville was not so good for him. His popularity went down after that. They had to rework his rhetoric around that issue several times, and my sense is that this is this year's Charlottesville.
And let's talk a little bit about that. Obviously, once the vote is again expected to take place, as we're here in studio on Tuesday today, how much legs does it have following it? As we saw, Charlottesville seemed to for quite some time.
I think it's going to come down to what the vote actually is. Nancy Pelosi is urging for a unanimous vote, which makes a lot of sense. It should not be divisive to ask members of the House of Representatives to condemn a president of the United States making explicitly racist statements regarding 4 members of the House. So if anything should be a unanimous vote, this should be. We know that it won't be. The question is, will there just be a few dissenters among the Republicans who join the Democrats, or will the Republican Party splinter pretty effectively and highlight that there does seem to be a moral compass guiding at least some of those members?
But what does this have to say to the other side of the aisle? Of course, all of the news sort of leading up to this had seemed to be the increasingly strained relationships between Speaker Pelosi and those progressive Democratic members. Now they seem united. What does this mean for the Democrats?
It's, as terrible as this sounds, it's the best thing that ever could have happened for the Democrats for 2 reasons. The first is the focus on internal strife is gone. And the second is, remember that that focus had to deal with whether Nancy Pelosi was sort of seeming like she was bordering on racism and how she was singling out these 4 women. If that's the debate that people are going to have, that debate becomes moot when the president says explicitly racist things. So as far as the Democrats are concerned, this not only unites them, but I think it also takes the flame out of any kind of criticism that the old guard among the Democratic Party doesn't really understand racial dynamics, because the juxtaposition is now not the progressive Democrats versus the old guard, it's the Democrats versus Donald Trump.
So all eyes are going to again be on this vote expected with the House of Representatives on Tuesday as we're here in studio. But let's look again at that broader picture on the 2020 side of things, with the Democratic competition heating up for 2020. And of course, obviously, the last set of debates seemed like a long while ago. A lot of focus now, obviously, on fundraising numbers from those who are running. What are we keeping an eye on? What's the next kind of big thing that we're looking at on the Democratic side?
Well, I think the next big thing is going to be on Thursday when CNN announces the lineup for the second debate. Because again, there are going to be 10 candidates in each of those debates, and the composition of those debates allows people to either emerge or, sort of fall behind. Elizabeth Warren, for example, didn't have any real competition in her debate last time around, and as a result was able to propel her victory from that debate into greater fundraising numbers, into higher poll numbers. I don't know what's going to happen if she's on a stage with Kamala Harris or Joe Biden this time around. Similarly, the sparks that flew at the last debate between Harris and Biden might be completely absent this time around. Biden could luck out and have only second-tier candidates on the stage with him. So we really don't know what the dynamics are going to be until CNN announces the lineup. And you've got to love CNN. They're going to do it live. So there's a reason, for all of us to tune in.
It sort of has like this March Madness, this July Madness feel to it because of such the crowded field. You raise the point. It's exactly who they're across from. I mean, you must have predicted this, that this was going to be the early stages. It really all depends on what environment they're in because, again, they're not going to get them all on the stage together at this point in time.
Right. The one thing I do believe is that this is an improvement over previous years where there's been the amateur hour debate and then the adult debate, because it makes it impossible for anybody who's trailing to reemerge. Nobody is going to watch the pre-prime time debate. So, here you're actually asking people to tune in for twice as long, but there's a reason to tune into both. That said, the winnowing process has got to start. I mean, we cannot have two sets of 10 people in September and in November and in December if we actually want Iowa voters to make a clear decision. We are seeing, though, I think, the fruits of some of the debates in that if you look at early polls, in New Hampshire, for example, it's a real three-person race within the margin of error with Joe Biden, Kamala Harris, Joe Biden, Elizabeth Warren, and Bernie Sanders. And prior to the debates, that was not the case. So they do move some voters who are paying attention early on, which is why having fewer people on that stage might actually provide people with the information that would be helpful to cast ballots.
Well, we'll continue. We'll keep eyes on that this Thursday. I want to take things a little bit more local here. Of course, Jennifer Lawless, former professor of political science at Brown, former congressional candidate here in Rhode Island. I want to talk a little bit with you about Governor Gina Raimondo's start to her second term here. Now, we did see her not getting many of her budget requests in this fiscal year 2020 budget recently passed. CNBC recently ranked Rhode Island 50th for business. DCYF director stepped down. Of course, the educational issues here in Providence. And then finally, a big healthcare merger, which she was trying to broker, fell through today. How does she right the ship?
It's hard because it's sinking in every direction. Now, there are a couple of things that I think she can sort of take solace in knowing, which is that she's not up for re-election. So the legacy here is not necessarily going to be her political future, but it is going to be whether Democrats are able to credibly run a Democratic candidate for governor next time around on the successes of 8 years of Democrats in the governor's mansion. And that's tricky, especially given that Rhode Island has demonstrated a willingness to elect Republicans as governor. So that is a problem. The other thing is if she has broader political ambitions, whether it to be ultimately to run for a U.S. Senate seat or if she wants to be presidential or vice presidential material, these are not the kinds of track records that you want that set you apart as a rising star. All of that said, it's still pretty early, and it's possible to have a really, really bad year and then have a really, really good year next time around. And voters are fickle, and public opinion is fickle, and people remember what they hear last. So I wouldn't be, if I were Gina Raimondo right now, I would not be in a panic mode, but I do think that some clear shakeups within the administration would allow her potentially to take some of the heat, but also demonstrate that she's got a plan to ensure that we don't continue down this path.
So do you think that's necessary? Again, those types of shakeups to say, hey, let's hit the reset button here. I mean, does she need to reset her agenda or does she need to reset her team or both?
I don't know. I mean, I don't know what makes the most sense given the reason behind the failures. I'm not sure why she has not succeeded in making sure that her agenda is embodied in the budget. Typically, the governor of a state issues a state of the state address, and the General Assembly and the state Senate pick up on many of those things, and they craft their budget accordingly. The governor doesn't get everything that he or she wants, but almost everything in that budget is what the governor wanted, right? It's just a subset. And so I don't know, but I think that that's the first thing to look at. Why was there this? Why was there no congruence there? But, again, there are other issues that she can say she's behind, that she has supported, that might not have been her top priorities, but that have had success in the legislature, and that she has certainly always been an advocate for. And so I think a lot of it might be communications and rhetoric and shifting of the narrative. And that might be all that it takes to change public opinion a little bit.
As you said, again, when we talk here in the studio, we say a week's an eternity. A year is an absolute, if it's eternity, there's nothing more. But of course, we're going to be keeping an eye on this, that live draft, if you will, this coming week as to what the next set of debates are for the 2020 Democratic primary. I'm sure it'll be interesting discussion fodder next week after the dust has settled or gotten kicked up some more down in D.C. So Jennifer Lawless, thank you so much for taking the time to Skype in.
Of course.
Okay. We're going to let Jennifer Lawless go. We're going to get a lot more local here on Go Local Live, so don't go anywhere. We'll be right back.